So I'm an asshole and that's okay. I piss people off and it makes my day. Well, unfortunately, my co-host or co-worker Richard, he couldn't make it tonight. He had a bad day. That happens. That happens. You just gotta deal with that sort of thing when you're in production. it's it's how it happens. But the sock monkeys are here! Sock monkeys! Yes! Look, they love each other. Sock monkeys, yes. Sock monkeys. I don't know how many of you know what a sock monkey is or remember a sock monkey, but when I was a kid growing up, sock monkey was a big deal. So our show tonight is going to be somewhat truncated. I'm going to tell you a few stories. Um, I was going to do a one of my old shticks called Rocco Cabana belches to your favorite tunes. But we'll save that for another time when Richard can be here and help me out with that. I need someone to play the music for me on their phone or something, so I've got something to reference when I'm belching. Oh, what happened? There it goes. My screen just went blank, so I didn't know what was going on. I was, huh? Am I stupid? No, I'm not. Anyway, so let's get to it. I used to work at WOAI radio. And yes, I'm once again reaching for a beer. You can see this. And I worked the midnight to 6 a.m. shift at WOAI radio. The midnight shift meant that at midnight I'd have to tune into a program that from a guy called Roy Masters for an hour. And you talk about an egotistical, self-centered individual whose view of the world was the only view that should be. Wow, amazing. And then after that, I would do Larry King for 3 or 4 hours. I used to love doing a Larry King show because Larry King was always talking to interesting people, had interesting stories. Well, one of the guys I worked with at WOAI on this shift was a guy named DOA Dan McClay. Dan would not go to a story unless there was a body involved. There had to be a body involved. That was the way Dan thought, you know. Sensationalism radio, I guess, in its infancy before it became prevalent. And yes, we're still drinking. But at one point, Dan met this girl here in San Antonio who was just up here for a few days or whatever. Happened to be from Mexico. And as I understand it, a very attractive and comely young lady. And after he met her over a weekend, he started when he came to work. He's like, "Wow, I met this girl. Her name is so and so. She's from Mexico. Blah blah. This, that, and the other." And I looked at it and I said, "Dan, you're being played." He goes, "What do you mean I'm being played? She probably has somebody back in Mexico, man, and she's just trying to use you for God knows whatever she's trying to use you for." And he's like, "No, this is a real thing. I'm going to get a new apartment, a bigger apartment, so we got room for both of us, and blah, blah, blah." And needless to say, about 3 months into it, he somehow found out she was dating somebody else back in Mexico, pretty much as I had said. Now, those of us in the station, I suppose it was a guilty thing to do, but we had a pretty good laugh about it at Dan's expense. I mean, hell, the guy was the talk of two countries with one woman. So we enjoyed ourselves a little bit with that one and sort of played off of that during our radio shows and whatnot. Poor old Dan. He had to put up with it. Now, one time I used to work at another radio station I used to work at was KTSA. KTSA AM radio. And one night when I came in, the usual disc jockey wasn't there. Once again, I was on a midnight to 6 a.m. shift. I like working nights. I work nights almost 40 years now. And I love it. But their usual guy wasn't there. They had a new disc jockey. I can't remember the kid's name or whatnot. He was a few years younger than I was, and seemed like a nice guy. But I asked him, well, where'd you work at before? He said, well, I had a contract with such and such a radio station out in Iowa. I said, so what happened out in Iowa? He goes, well, we got into a disagreement as to how things should go, so they decided to let me go and pay off my contract. So I came to San Antonio to work for KTSA. After I put out all these feelers and whatnot and resumes, KTSA was the ones that were playing the closest to what I was making before when I was out in Iowa. I said, well, okay, I can understand that. You came to San Antonio, make more money and whatnot. He says, yeah, but I left on an epic note. I go, what do you mean you left on an epic note? He goes, yeah, you ever heard about the guy who pissed in the trash can on the air about a year ago? And I thought, and I said, yeah, I've heard that story. I mean, it's one of those, urban legends and sort of passes around. Well, it turns out it was him. When they terminated his contract on his last night with the station, he pointed the mic and lowered it as close to the trash can as he could get and proceeded to take a piss in the trash can on air. I mean, wow. Talk about balls. Man, oh man, oh man. I mean, radio people are nuts, but so my next question was, well, what did you do with the piss in the can? I left it there for the next guy. Oh, God, these people are crazy, man. Don't ever work around people in radio. Don't ever work in radio unless you're nuts and you're willing to put up with the lunatics. It can be pretty funny at times. Now, another job that I had was installing fireplaces into apartment complexes and homes. Prefabricated metal fireplaces. And we would normally have to go up to Austin every day, which is about a 70-mile trip from San Antonio. But we'd have to go up to Austin normally and do our installations and new home construction around the Austin area, the Georgetown area and such, and apartment complexes. Well, one morning I was in Austin, early in the morning, of course, about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm driving up this street that's sort of a hill on my way to the apartment complex where I was going to do some installations at. And luckily, I heard a rattle and a thump. And I pulled over to the side of the road there. And lo and behold, right there in the middle of a very busy area was laying one of my toolboxes that was filled with self-tap, self-drilling screws. So I had to get out of the truck and find that, of course. And once I did, I got out my broom and my dustpan, swept up all the screws I could find and put them back in the toolbox. And at that point, I just got back in my truck with my toolbox and proceed on my way. Well, I was at the apartment complex maybe about 2 hours into doing some installs and whatnot and running pipe, as we used to call it, when my supervisor showed up. A guy by the name of Mike. And he walks in, he goes, John, is this going all right here? I said, yeah, it's going fine. He says, yeah, man, I just saw the damnedest thing about 2 miles back. I go, what do you mean? Yeah, there's this hill you got to come up to get into this area. And I must have seen about a dozen cars pulled over with flat tires. I'm not talking one, I'm talking 2 or 3 tires flattened. Well, about that point, it occurred to me that maybe I wasn't so good at sweeping up all them screws. Fell off the back of the truck. Of course, I never told him that. I had a good private little chuckle about that. This next story is about my mother. Don't get me wrong. I love my mother. She's been passed away now for, about 14 years. My father for 12. But my mother was one of those people who had a sick, twisted sense of humor. Oh, God. People ask me, John, why are you such a screwed up individual? Such weird humor, and you can be very dark humored at times. So that's my mother's fault. She's the one that gave me that gene. She's the one with the sick, twisted sense of humor. And I had this conversation with her one evening when I went over to visit on a Friday night. And what we used to do is I used to visit on Fridays and do my laundry there. And I'd bring a couple of movies. She'd make dinner, and Pop would be there going, yeah, it's only good the only time I get to eat good food because you're showing up. She's cooking dinner. I was like, yeah, right, Pop. Of course, he was just kidding. Mom always cooked. And she says, yeah, I got your dad good yesterday. And I go, what are you talking about? You got dad good? How'd you get dad good? She says, I woke up and I was facing away from him on the bed. And then I decided I'm going to pretend I'm dead. It's like, what? She goes, yeah. So I heard your father wake up. He rolled over and sat on the edge of the bed. And then he reached over and he shook me like he normally does. And he went, Vera, I'm going to go make the coffee. I'll be, by the time you get up and use the restroom, I'll have the coffee made. She said, I didn't react. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't do anything. I just lay there. And it took your father a few seconds, but then he said, Vera? And he shook me again. And I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't do anything. I just lay there with my eyes open. About that time, he's starting to panic. And he's going, oh shit. And he came around to my side of the bed, and he's looking at me, and he's looking at me at my face and my body and whatnot, and he's going, Vera, and he's still shaking me, and I'm still just laying there. And he kept shaking me, and finally I looked at him and said, what? And he just jumped back about 2 feet. He only jumped back 2 feet because that's where the wall was. He hit the wall. And he's like, Jesus Christ, what was that all about? He says, I thought you were dead. She goes, well, I wasn't, but I was just pretending to be. Why? Why, Vera? Why would you do that? I just wanted to see what you would do. My mother had a very twisted sense of humor. Some of the things that came out of her mouth at times, I would sit there and, wow. And I'm no angel. We all know that you've seen enough of these broadcasts already to know that I'll say goddamn near anything that comes to mind. But wow, she was an artist when it came to that sort of stuff. So we've been at this for a few minutes. Unfortunately, like I said, I can't do Rocco Cabana tonight. And that was a big part of my show, or was going to be. But we'll try to get it in next week. See how that works out, you know. I want you to note the shirt, Vienna, Austria. I've never been. I've always wanted to go there, but I've never been, you know. Part of this show, one of the things in this show that I want to incorporate is different types of t-shirts with slogans and sayings on them. Very loud collared, what I call Hawaiian bowling alley shirts. So that you all got some sort of fashion to follow once you start following me. And I will continue to do this. This week was not as planned. You know, I just sort of had to make things up on the go. I don't have a person there to giggle along with me, which makes it easier. But I will be back next week, so don't worry. And in the meantime, Sock Monkey! Remember, Sock Monkey's always here, and I'm always here. And with that, I bid you adieu.